on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Kevin Jackwitz. This is the Kaged Review, and this is going to be my spoiler review for Spider-Man Far From Home. I gave a very brief non-spoiler review because I wanted to save everything pretty much for this review. And there's actually a lot to get into with this movie. There was actually some pretty big surprises, and a couple of very cool ones that point to the future of the MCU. Maybe, possibly. So the first thing you really take away from this movie is this is life right after everything with Thanos. And now everybody's back from what they are calling the blip. Not the snap, because most people don't know that it was a snap from Thanos. So they call it the blip, where a bunch of people just disappeared and then they came right back to where they were. Some people grew up 5 years in that time, and the people who blipped did not grow up 5 years in that time. They just came right back to where they were. And so there was a little bit of confusion in the world. So I thought that was a really cool thing that they did. They had a couple of students doing, like the school news, and they were explaining everything about the blip, and they were showing like the band reappearing, and everybody just being like, what the hell? So it was really cool, and it was kind of a funny way to explain everything as far as like how the rest of the world understood what had happened. Obviously, your main villain in this one is going to be Mysterio. Mysterio in the comics, he's one of Spider-Man's like biggest villains, and hasn't been in the movies yet, so it was really cool that we got to see him. And the fact that it was Jake Gyllenhaal, for me, just made it really cool. So he comes in as Quentin Beck, Mysterio. He shows up pretty early on in the movie, and he's kind of playing the hero, and there's these elementals, these 4 elementals that he's fighting and trying to essentially save the world from these elementals. And so he explains to Nick Fury that he's from outer space and he's got all these powers. And so Nick Fury introduces Spider-Man to Mysterio, and they're going on to take on the final elemental. So it's very, very cool. And then they have this big fight scene where they actually defeat this fire elemental that they're worried about destroying the world. And Peter Parker really starts to trust Quentin Beck at this point. And he's like, you know what? I'm really not ready to be a leader or an Avenger or something like that. And so he gives Quentin Beck these glasses that Iron Man had left him, that it has Edith, which is the new name for the AI that controls all of his computers, and so it's a pretty powerful thing. So he actually gives this to Quentin Beck, Mysterio. And it was at this point in the movie that you realize what's really going on. There was this bar scene where all of this happens, where Spider-Man is talking to Mysterio. He says, I'm not ready for this. He gives the glasses over to Mysterio. And then you realize that everything has been a lie. That Mysterio, the whole concept of Mysterio, is fake. And these elementals were all fake. It was Quentin Beck who developed the BARF program that Iron Man was talking about in Civil War. And Quentin Beck was really jaded that Tony Stark would use what he created to deal with his own personal issues. And so it was really smart, and it wound up being that all of this stuff that they're seeing, these big fights, these elementals, Mysterio himself, was nothing more than holographs. Holographs created by a bunch of drones. And so it was really smart the way they tied that in there. I was, kind of curious if they were going to have Mysterio actually being the Mysterio that we know from the comics. And that's kind of how the movie started, and then they transitioned into a very smart way of explaining how it's actually just a regular guy creating all of this stuff. And so eventually they find out that Mysterio is not the guy he says he was. Spider-Man goes after him. And there was this one really cool dream sequence that was something like you would see out of Scarecrow from the DC universe. Scarecrow, he has this noxious gas that makes you hallucinate. And so um, Quentin Beck has these drones creating these holograms for Peter Parker, and it kind of has the same effect. You know, like you're seeing all of this stuff, and you kind of think it's real. And so it was very cool, and it actually looked amazing. The special effects were phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Really were great. Um, just one of the best sequences I've seen like that, honestly. Very, very cool. At the end of the story, of course, Peter Parker is going to win. He winds up killing Mysterio. He's using a spider sense because there's still a lot of holograms around that Quentin Beck is using, and the only way Peter Parker can tell what's real is through the spider sense. And so there was a scene where Quentin Beck is on the ground and he gets shot, and it was all a hologram. And then Peter Parker uses his Spidey sense and grabs the actual Quentin Beck's hand, who had a gun in it, and wound up killing him in the end. And that all kind of led to Quentin Beck's master plan, which was to kind of color Peter Parker in a really bad light. And so he used a lot of doctored images and posted them up on like Times Square, where it's like big, monitors where he's showing everybody in the world who Spider-Man really is, blows out that it's actually Peter Parker, and makes it look like Peter was responsible for all the bad things that were happening. So it was very, very well thought out in a lot of ways. I really did like that. Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, like I said, he was very good. The only thing I really do feel like the Vulture Tombs was fleshed out a lot more, and I think they did a lot more with him in Homecoming, especially when they tied him to I believe it was MJ, and that was pretty big, because now there's this really super close connection between Toombs and Peter Parker, which I thought was very, very smart. And so for that reason, I really did like the villain and the way they used the villain in Homecoming more than Far From Home. And that's not to say that I didn't like Mysterio, or that they didn't do a good job, or that Jake Gyllenhaal didn't do a good job, because Jake Gyllenhaal, he was great. He really was. He was so fun. Tom Holland as Spider-Man, he is my favorite Spider-Man. I think he absolutely killed the role. And there were things in this movie that he really had to fight with, not only with Mysterio, but with trying to, confess to MJ that he has feelings for and stuff like that. And he plays everything out very, very well. It was really good. And Zendaya as MJ absolutely killed it as well. And there was this cute little scene where Spider-Man was going to tell her that, he had feelings for her, and then she, says, "I know, you're Spider-Man, it's obvious." And so he was, kind of taken aback by that, which I thought was really funny. As far as the mid and end credit scenes, I thought that was very, very cool. Mid-credit scene you get where you have Nick Fury and the other lady from S.H.I.E.L.D. in the car, and it turns out that it's actually two Skrulls posing as Nick Fury and the other girl. I can't remember her name, Smolder or something like that. So it's actually Talos as Nick Fury, and then you have a little cutscene where it shows Nick Fury, and he looks like he's on vacation, but he's actually on a spaceship with a bunch of Skrulls. And so this actually could lead to a couple of different things. In the comics, the S.H.I.E.L.D. does get disbanded, gets destroyed, and then they come back with S.W.O.R.D., which I forget exactly what the acronym is for S.W.O.R.D., but essentially it goes from S.H.I.E.L.D. being the thing that protects the Earth from outside invaders to S.W.O.R.D., which is basically a whole universe type thing, where they understand that there's a lot of aliens and space creatures and things like that, and you have threats from everywhere. And so it's kind of a group alliance, and it's a little bit more, it's more than just our world. So that's kind of what S.W.O.R.D. is. So it looks like they may be hinting towards that. And also, it looks like they might be hinting towards Secret Invasion, which is very possible. There's been a couple of theories about what they're going to be doing after Phase 3 into Phase 4 or 5. And one of the big theories is Galactus, but another one is Secret Invasion. And if you don't know Secret Invasion, it's where the Skrulls start mimicking the superheroes and the people we know from Earth, and taking over. And so it's a very, very cool storyline, a very big storyline in Marvel Comics. Um, so I'm pretty excited about that. I think that there's a lot of potential there for a lot of storylines, honestly. And then one of the last segments you get, the end credit scene, J.K. Simmons comes back and reprises his role as J. Jonah Jameson, which I thought was hilarious. J.K. Simmons absolutely killed it in the first Spider-Man trilogy, and I was really happy to see him back. So that was cool. So overall, like I said, I really liked this movie. I think I gave it like a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10, and I might even bump that up to an 8.5 out of 10 because it really was a damn good movie. It was really fun, had a lot of very cool special effects. Everything looked really good, had some heart to it, a very cool storyline, kind of a well thought out storyline, honestly. So it was just a lot of fun. Um, so that's really where I'm at, and I think I am going to bump it up to an 8.5 out of 10 because they did such a damn good job with so much of this movie. It was such a good time. I really did like it, and I just thought it was smart as hell. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's where I'm at. Obviously, a lot more in depth than my first review, but like I said, the non spoiler review, there wasn't a whole lot that I could talk about without spoiling a lot, so save it for this one. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. 8.5 out of 10. Let me know what you guys thought about it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, hit the like button, subscribe, and share. My name is Kevin Jackowitz. Kaged Nation, out.